those creative people that you really want to keep empowered, keep excited, keep motivated, keep thinking, a place to meet others who share the same interests, are like-minded, that want to do similar things, and just give them an opportunity to see what they can build over the weekend.
Welcome to We're Only Human, a podcast focused on blending research and practical advice to help today's HR, talent, and learning leaders improve business outcomes. Let's welcome your host, Ben Eubanks.
Hello everyone, welcome to We're Only Human. I'm your host Ben Eubanks and I'm so glad you could join us today. A few quick comments and housekeeping notes, things like that. My company, Lighthouse Research and Advisory, is running a couple small research projects right now. In one of them, we're actually talking with HR leaders at companies where they've changed their performance review process away from an annual to a more frequent review cycle, because we're trying to understand how they're changing their compensation approach now that they don't have that annual mark to look at. So if you're doing something with that and you're curious or you just love to share, love to have a conversation with you confidentially. We can additionally share some of the things that we're hearing from others in the market about what's happening there. So happy to share some of those details. If you want to reach out, love to have a conversation. Additionally, I think I'm going to mention this every time I talk to you guys. The book, Artificial Intelligence for HR, is out. It is on Amazon, easy to find. It actually debuted in the #1 spot on Amazon's new and noteworthy books in the HR channel, which was awesome for me, just really validating and exciting. The book definitely is about technology, but it's also about how HR can be more high touch, create a more human workplace. So I think there's just something in there for all of us to learn from. Plus, I tell some really interesting stories, both about myself and about organizations that we can learn from. So I'm going to take a quick second and tell you one of the stories that I love, just because I'm always willing to have a laugh, help others have a laugh at something that I've done that might not be very intelligent. So a couple years ago, there was a storm that came through and it blew off a piece of the tin on the side of my parents' outbuilding. And I was like, you know what? I'm not handy, but I'm going to give them a hand. I'm going to help them figure this thing out. I'm going to, prove that I have what it takes to do this, because I am not blessed with any sort of handy skills. So I went and got the materials. I went over there and tried to get my ladder up on the building, and I couldn't reach the roof. It wasn't tall enough. So I kind of drove around the building looking for a way to get in, couldn't figure it out. So I opened up the roll-up door and I realized if I back the truck in against the wall, I can put the ladder in the back of the truck and climb out onto the roof, fix this hole. So I was feeling pretty confident, right? I had solved this problem. I got up there, I put the piece of tin on, covered the hole up, and I was pumped. I could not wait to get down and tell everybody what I'd done, just show off my newfound handy skills. And then I realized that I had just patched up the hole that I'd climbed out of, and there was no way for me to get back into the building, no way for me to get down to the ground, and I was trapped on top of the roof. So obviously I got down. All these years later, I was able to survive that. But it's a story that I tell to explain how when we make a decision, even if we have a strategy and we solve a problem, something else changes. And it's hard to envision what that change might be, what the outcome might be, what the consequence might be. And so it's really an interesting story. Again, one of those fun ones I love to tell. I'll make sure and get a link to the book in the show notes if you want to check it out, and you can hear stories like that one and others, both personal and about, again, companies that are doing interesting things, really interesting stories, some examples, other good stuff, and good reminders that in spite of all the automation, the robots, the technology, all the things out there, HR is a very human profession. It is really the most human profession, I'd like to say, just because we're tied in with not just with the business, but with the people and how they operate and how we can create better experiences for them. So it's something that I'm definitely a big believer in. So shifting gears a little bit, let's jump to today's show. Today I'm actually interviewing Toni Eberhart. She's the executive director and all-around awesome person that leads Urban Engine. In the conversation, you'll hear her talk about Huntsville, where we both live. But obviously, innovation and creativity are not limited to here. A fun fact about Huntsville, by the way, we have more PhDs per capita than any other city in the United States. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on with DOD and NASA, things like that here. And I always tell everyone that redneck rocket scientist is a real thing. So if you're interested in creativity, innovation, you're going to enjoy this one. Also, if you like that topic in general, you should check out episode 7, which is 8 ways HR can drive enterprise innovation, and episode 10, your employees aren't innovative enough, where I actually interviewed the executive dean at the University of Phoenix about a research study they did that explored what hiring managers want from workers. hint, they want creativity, and how they felt it was lacking in the research study. So hiring managers not very happy about that. So today we're going to talk about co-working, hackathons, how to encourage innovation among your people. It's a really fun discussion, and obviously, as you'll be able to tell, Toni is super passionate about this. Now, on to the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to We Are Only Human. I am Ben Eubanks, your host, and I am so glad to have you here today. So innovation, if you've listened for very long, you know innovation is one of my favorite topics to talk about. Not because it's just broadly interesting, because it is, but because specific applications and ways to increase creativity are something that every organization is looking for. Everyone wants to know how to cross-pollinate ideas, how to create new ideas, and how to create new innovation. Everybody struggles with that a little bit too, I think, though. There's a lot of myths around how innovation happens, and you think they have this vision of the one smart guy, Steve Jobs, come down off the mountain with the tablets and all this great ideas, and it doesn't often happen like that for the most part. It comes from different sorts of ways, and so I actually saw today's guest at an event recently, had a chance to meet her and talk to her, and she is incredibly sharp. At the event, she talked about innovation as a playground and that kind of metaphor. And I knew that I needed to have her join me on the podcast and talk more about innovation and how we can make that very practical for the HR leaders out there that are thinking about how to bring innovation into the business. So without further ado, I'd love to welcome Toni Eberhart. She's the executive director of Urban Engine. Welcome, Toni.
Hey, Ben, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm pumped about this. Everybody that's listened before knows that I interview people that I personally am interested in talking to and curious about. And so tell us a little more about who you are, what you do.
Sure. So like you said, my name is Toni, and I'm executive director of Urban Engine, which is a nonprofit organization that's based in Huntsville, Alabama. And our mission is to connect aspiring entrepreneurs and established business leadership to community, educational resources, and talent. And really what all of our community programming does is accelerate innovation and ideation.
Awesome. So let's talk about that piece on innovation, because that's, again, I've said the word probably 50 times, and I'll say it 50 more times before we're done today, because it's one of those things that, again, I'm super interested in how that happens. So I saw you at Disrupt HR last fall. You were one of the speakers, and I thank you again for being a great speaker, because we got great reviews on your topic and just how you shared and your passion, for sure.
Yeah.
So you talked about innovation as a playground. Why do you think innovation is such a hot button right now?
I think innovation has always been a hot button, because just the history of mankind revolves around how to do things better, how to problem solve, how to do things differently. I think more recently, in conjunction with startup activity, we consider innovation as an opportunity to differentiate as a business or to disrupt an industry. And really, it's just an opportunity to make money, right? So if you can do something differently, if you can do something innovative that no one has ever done before, the next big thing with technology, chances are there's going to be some money associated with that. So people are always trying to get in front of that. But in terms of innovation and what it can do to keep an individual that is working for someone engaged and inspired and excited about their work, I think we're starting to take best practices from those famous innovators and startup founders and researchers and scientists and use them in a work environment that makes people really excited to show up for work every day.
So that's the thing that I'm really curious about, because you talked about it from the entrepreneur's perspective, and that's the direction that a lot of the people you work with, that is where they come from in their background. And it's funny, because at the same time, I hear a lot of employers say, I wish our people were a little bit more, creative, a little bit more forward thinking, a little bit more entrepreneurial in how they approach their job, how they approach the business, like feel a little bit of ownership, feel a little bit of the weight of that, and also feel a little bit of the opportunity to be creative and to look for new things that you can do. So I like that you pointed out it's not just for someone, the cool tech startup that's just getting up and running, but each individual person, there's an opportunity for them to tie into that, right?
Absolutely. And I think there's a difference between being entrepreneurial and being an entrepreneur. Those two things are very, very different. And the person that the actual individual that can identify with either of those things, which are different, probably have different risk tolerances. They have different career interests. They have different personal goals that coincide with it. And so I think encouraging employees to become more entrepreneurial is really important to get them thinking about new innovations that they can bring as an employee to the business. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. So there's one of the things that you do here in Huntsville, and I'm sure these kind of things happen elsewhere, but you're the closest and you're the smartest person on this. I wanted to talk to you specifically. Let's talk about this idea of co-working. I know broadly co-working is a trend we're seeing more of. I'm seeing more of kind of in the there are companies that are really getting a lot of venture capital investment and diving into the co-working piece specifically. But one of the interesting things, the activities that your team does is this thing called co-working night. Can you talk about kind of the value of co-working broadly and then how that filters down into these events that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. And thanks for asking that question, because co-working night is, like you said, one of our most exciting programs that Urban Engine offers. And it's been going on, and we'll have our 4th anniversary this April. So, we've been at co-working night for 4 years, and throughout the last 4 years, we facilitate, about 150 events per year. We have co-working night every single week. It's the heartbeat of the startup and innovation ecosystems here in Huntsville. It's just super exciting, and man, is it hard to describe in a podcast because you really have to be there. But the format of it is that every Wednesday evening here in Huntsville, we do it on Tuesdays in Birmingham, Alabama. We have a place in Huntsville. It's at Huntsville West, which is a startup incubator, office space, and co-working option for people if they're looking for a co-working space. And on Wednesday evenings, Urban Engine really just takes over the place. There's multiple conference rooms here because of the nature of how people do business, and there's small offices, and people need to share conference rooms in order to meet with their clients. And those conference rooms are converted into training rooms on Wednesday evenings. And from 6 to 10 p.m., we will offer between 6 and 10, roughly approximately 6 to 10 workshops every single week on a range of topics, from artificial intelligence and machine learning to leadership development, social media marketing, photography, software development. Tonight, we're recording this on a Wednesday, so we're doing a bigger event within co-working night where we're going to do a short hackathon, which is a coding marathon, but because of the nature of just how short it'll be, 4 hours, it's probably just going to be more of an idea concept presentation. And we're going to have the Toastmasters here talking about public speaking. And between, I would say 50 to 75 people per week will gather at co-working night for reasons that span the gamut. I mean, you name it. You've got people who are coming here because they're looking to launch a business. They're wanting to understand how to put together a business plan. But you've got a lot of people. I would say probably more than 50% of the people that participate in co-working night are looking to learn, connect, and collaborate. They're looking for professional development opportunities. Quick story I can share personally. I got invited to co-working night by a colleague. My background is in marketing, pretty traditional marketing, digital marketing, content development, social media, that kind of thing. And a colleague had invited me. He was going to have a workshop at co-working night where he was going to be talking about user experience, and realizing that there was a lot of collaboration between traditional marketing tactics and strategy and user experience. That was something that I was looking to better familiarize myself so that I could understand best practices and bring that back to the workplace as I pursued my career. And that's just my story, but we see that replicated time and time again across people for why they show up at co-working night. And it's fun just to kind of see these people who are mostly young people, are 24 to 35 is the age range that most people fall within. Certainly not just that age range, but that's the average. And just watching these folks choose their own adventure and learn and grow professionally week after week has been really, really cool. Hear about really great ideas for how to do things better for their employees. But then occasionally we hear some really great startup ideas too. And that's really the most exciting part of my job. And yeah, co-working night is just, is really something special, I think.
So how many of the people would you say that are coming to these events, are there I would imagine there's a demographic that finds this all interesting, but maybe it's there for professional development, right? They have a full-time job, or they're working somewhere as a coder, engineer, software engineer, developer. They're working in those types of fields, but maybe their company doesn't offer them the flexibility or the opportunity to really stretch those muscles. Again, geographically, we're here in Huntsville, where a ton of work is affected by governments, NASA, things like that. They have very rigid policies and structures, and they're not the first ones you think of when you think of innovation and creativity and co-working and other flexible kinds of work. So do you see a contingent of people that show up that are doing this to help them as an outlet creatively?
Totally. I'm a firm believer in the value that Coworking Night offers the community, just for, for many reasons, but if no other reason, because it's a platform for creative autonomy. And if you are hiring those or looking to hire those really special, unique individuals that are able to take an idea and run with it, communicate it effectively, think outside the box, high energy, high motivated, real go-getter. If you expect that person to show up for work every day and do the same thing over and over and over again without any place to go, to express themselves, to think creatively, to be challenged on new ideas and new concepts, you run the risk of losing them. They're going to go someplace. They're going to go someplace else. They're not probably going to go. A lot of times, I would say very rarely are they going to go start their own company, although some of those qualities would lead you to believe that they could be inclined to go do it. But they're going to go find a place that resonates and empowers them to be creative and play.
Excellent. I love the word play, as you I like that kind of connotation there, because I don't know, I do a lot of writing and a lot of things. I have a little bit of marketing background like you, so I feel like I'm having fun with this. I'm creative to some degree, and I would think of it as play. Every time I get a conversation with someone, I talked to someone the other day about a launch plan for a new research project, and I was like, oh, this is like candy to me. I love being able to talk about this kind of stuff and collaborate. And that's one of the hard things about being on a virtual team is being a little dispersed like that. So one of the things you mentioned a minute ago, the hackathon thing, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I wanted to ask you about it. I know that Urban Engine has done I believe a couple different types of hackathons over the last couple of years, and I'd love for you to talk more about those. So let me give you a little bit of context really quick. I heard a couple stories in the last year or two. I actually wrote a story about a company here in the Huntsville area where we are that uses hackathons as a way to create this culture of innovation within their own team. Right? Their engineers are excited about it. They look forward to it. It's scheduled. It's something they can depend on, and they are saving ideas up for it. As soon as one finishes, they're already thinking about the next one. And I mean, all the really interesting metrics. I have the case study. I can throw that link in the show notes if anyone wants to dig into that and see what's going on there. But not every company is comfortable with that. Not every company has the resources to do that. So talk about a hackathon, how it works, what sort of outcomes come from a hackathon, and if someone's thinking about, hey, we have a lot of creative people, I'd love for us to consider that. What sort of ideas or suggestions would you give them for that?
Sure. Hackathons are really cool, and Urban Engine has a unique take on how we try to get people working together throughout a hackathon. So I'll save that difference for the end. For someone that's never heard of a hackathon before, if it's a new concept, the straight definition of a pure hackathon is a software development marathon under a timeline, right? So you say go, and you can start a software development project, and then when the time is up, whatever you've coded is your product that you've put together, and it can be presented, and then there's usually a winner at the end. And the reason why a lot of companies exercise this kind of programming internally is because, once again, it provides a platform for employees to innovate and play. I mean, surely if you are having people work on software development projects, there are new features, there are new functions, there are new applications that are presented along the way. And, understandably and reasonably, everybody has a bottom line. We need our folks to stay focused on the deliverables that are actually going to add value to whatever product is being developed. But but to the employee, to the engineer, the software developer that has come up with that new functionality or that new feature or that new application for the technology that's being developed, when it sits on the shelf, it doesn't leave them alone. It's right there on the shelf. It's looking at them. They're looking for an opportunity to have it go run and, add value and be alive in the world. Similarly, they're looking for problems to solve. So some of these hackathons could, while some companies take the approach of build whatever you want to build, we want to hear what you came up with at the end. Others may take the approach of we've got a bunch of problems that could be solved. Try and solve it within a weekend, or try and solve it this week, and if you can solve it, maybe we'll let you go run with it and, run that product or that business unit or whatever, because it can become a profitable innovation for the company. And so, yeah, Ben, you made a really good point that taking your teams of folks and allowing them a couple days or, a week of being able to do this kind of thing. I know a while ago, Google used to have their famous 10% time where they would let their people go and do whatever they wanted to do for 10% of the time. I don't think that worked out in the long run, but, once again, it was an idea that allowed people to play. I think that's why it's important to have these things going on in the community outside of the workplace, because it allows those creative people that you really want to keep empowered, keep excited, keep motivated, keep thinking, a place to meet others who share the same interests, are like-minded, that want to do similar things, and just give them an opportunity to see what they can build over the weekend. And some of the outcomes from that are, like I said, problems are solved. You've never quite been able to quite figure out the best way to do inventory management. Well, somebody might, knock it out over the course of a week during a hackathon. You may hear about a new application for a software that had been developed for, here in Huntsville, happens all the time, right? Is you develop a product for a government customer, you think that there could be a commercial application for it, right? But you don't know what, you don't know how. Let those people go and try and figure it out. And then it's just incredible for team building. I mean, to see even when Urban Engine facilitates hackathons, we very much do them external for the most part, although we do often partner with companies internally and run hackathons for them. When we do these externally and we just gather people from the community, it is just so incredible to watch strangers. I mean, a lot of times it's strangers who have never met before, have different skill sets, have different interests, come together, and over the course of the weekend, they're friends, they've built something together, they're now able to collaborate, call upon one another, inspire one another, teach each other things, and those relationships and those connections in the community are so critical to tying people to our community and letting them think and believing in themselves that they have a place here in Huntsville that they can launch and grow either as a professional, as an entrepreneur, or whatever capacity they're interested in taking their career.
Excellent. Excellent. I love that so much. The idea of whether your employer does it internally or not, this opportunity to do it externally, you're connecting with other smart people. Again, if someone is listening to this and you're thinking, hey, maybe I'm not the crazy one. Maybe I'm not, just because I have ideas and I'm always kind of pushing the envelope a little bit. You might not be the crazy one. There might be other people out there just like you that are the same kind of way. They're pushing the boundaries, trying to test things, trying to tweak things, being willing to experiment, and it puts you with some of those like-minded individuals. And who knows what you walk away with, right? I asked for some outcomes, and that could be completely off the charts amazing. It could be a little bitty tiny adjustment that just gets you, 5% of the way better, 5% better results, but it doesn't matter. Positive innovation, positive change, all those kind of things are good in the long run. So driving in towards that ultimate goal. So
yeah,
man, we've heard some really interesting ideas. Any other advice that you give to our audience of HR leaders, talent leaders, business leaders? Any other advice you'd give them to help those employers as they're trying to improve the creativity, the innovation within their own workforce?
Yeah, it goes back to where we met at the Disrupt event, Ben. I would say the advice from that event is the same that I could offer today, just to continue to look for places, platforms, programs that provide lots of peace, that provide a place for employees to practice creative autonomy and really just play and continue to innovate. Programs like Coworking Night are great for helping new employees find like-minded individuals that they can learn, connect, and collaborate with. And so I think just encouraging them to seek those opportunities, go out on a limb and participate. And it's after work, it's not gonna, it certainly isn't gonna hurt anything to encourage them to go. They might need a new friend. They're gonna create ties to the community that way. And then of course, just an open atmosphere, open door policy for ideas is a starting point. Maybe even just a training for managers to put together a system for if an employee has an idea or a new innovation that could be leveraged to make a process more efficient, an application for a software that's being developed, just a place to keep those ideas so that they don't get lost, and maybe even reward the employee for bringing that idea to the table is going to foster a culture of innovation. It's going to empower employees to feel like they can innovate for you. Even if you don't get a whole lot of face time, they're working with a customer that's, outside the corporate office or something like that. If they know where to go to put their ideas that's safe and they get rewarded for doing that, you're probably going to see a lot more activity as it pertains to innovation, ideation, and collaboration amongst employees.
Awesome. I totally love that. I love the idea of not just rewarding them for getting idea through that, kind of makes it through all the gates and everything else, but saying we're going to reward you regardless of whether this idea happens or not because you're putting forth the effort. We're trying to reward not the process and the people that make the decision, but we're trying to reward the activity of get ideas out there, share as much as you can. We're all better if we're all sharing, if we're all collaborating, if we're all bringing those things to the forefront. Every single idea can't happen, right? This is the real world. Every idea can't happen, but to encourage people to make sure they're taking the right steps and to push those things out there. I love that idea.
And what, Alfred, too, as I'm listening to you say that, Ben, I think that, here in Huntsville, a lot of companies are in the business of problem solving, and we employ a lot of technical professionals that a lot of them are introverts. So bringing an idea to a table or bringing an idea for how to solve a problem can seem kind of scary, especially if it's not a complete idea. It's just some sort of, half-baked, what if we tried it this way type thing. So focusing on that, and if it's like a Google Doc even where people can say, I think if we tried this differently, we might be able to save them money. That's something that can be sold. And I think that's definitely something that's worth rewarding.
Absolutely. I can't get away without telling one more story, and then I'm going to ask you to share about you and Urban Engine and how people can connect. So keep it in the back of your mind while I share this quick story. Years ago, I worked for a company that was very specific. One of our core values was innovation. We looked for ways to get that from people, and as you're talking about this, it reminded me of a story from there that I love to tell. So we had an employee that, honestly, she got a degree in engineering, but she didn't want to be an engineer. She did it, but she was very savvy on the marketing side. She was really great in customer relations, and those are the things that she loved. But she got the degree in engineering just to be able to get something. Again, in the world we live in here, it's very technology focused. And so what was interesting is because of her different and unique viewpoint, she came to the owners of the business one day and said, "Hey, I know we're doing this, we're selling this software this way, but what if we, instead of creating it to customize every time, what if we licensed it and we, had this new user licensing kind of approach and changed up some of the business part of how we're selling this, and it became a $3 million product line in less than 2 years." And it was this amazing idea that she's just like, what if we tried this? And everyone else had an engineering background, so they didn't think of it from that perspective. And that's what I always go back to, like these kinds of ideas and things. It's because of that diversity of thought, that diversity of insight, that some of those things can come to the forefront. And so just a good reminder for people that innovation, there's a lot of value to it, and there's a lot of value to encouraging people to think. I don't like the term outside the box necessarily, but think through different lenses, different perspectives. And so that's the story that came to mind. So thank you for reminding me of that one, because I love to share that. And I love to give kudos to her for that. Was a really cool idea, and one that helps to make it concrete. Talking about innovation is one thing, but making it concrete, there's true value in some of these things that you can come up with.
Totally. That is really cool that she was able to do that.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'll have to introduce you to them because they're here. They're still here local.
I would love to meet her.
So in the meantime, in the interim, if someone wants to connect with you, wants to connect, learn more about Urban Engine, what's the best way for them to do that?
Just head over to our website. Pretty much everything you'd ever want to know is right there at urbanengine.org.
Awesome. .org. I'll make sure and get that link in the show notes so that everybody can check that out. And goodness, if it's not apparent, I'll go ahead and say it out loud. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I've learned a lot, and I love sharing this positive message of innovation with everyone else. So I really appreciate you, Toni, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun, Ben.
Awesome. To everybody else, this has been We're Only Human. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you for listening to We're Only Human. Please take a moment to share this episode with another HR leader who might see it as a valuable resource in their daily work. For more information about the podcast and to see all our show archives, please visit upstarthr.com.